Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of the LongPlayCast. This is essentially replacing what we used to call the TVG talk videos. Uh, Really, the purpose is to make it a little bit more freeform, a little bit more like a podcast, a little bit more like a conversation rather than like uh, working off of opinions or of news, I should say. And so today we
Yeah.
have like an overarching discussion about next gen, I guess, with a lot of different companies kind of rushing towards next gen. I think it's
Yeah.
fair to say that we're seeing a little bit of the bumps along the way. And
Hmm.
it's easy to say that from some angles, you could say that we weren't really ready for next gen. I mean, the issues that Nvidia has had for a very long time now, since they launched the RTX 3000 series.
Right.
Uh, AMD is on the way still, or kind of. We're seeing a lot of benchmarks and whatnot, but nothing too concrete as of yet.
Yeah.
And on the console side, we have, of course, Sony and Microsoft that are launching their PlayStation consoles, the two systems and then the series on the Xbox. And of course, Nintendo is like I don't know, minding their own business for now. I guess
Right.
there's some rumors as to what they could be going on for next gen, but I guess that a good way to start sort of this conversation would be to talk about the issues that we've been seeing with pre-orders. I feel like that's a very big tell because Sony has had issues, Microsoft has had issues, Nvidia has had a lot of issues. So
Right.
I don't know. What do you think that might be because there were just too many things going on with the coronavirus and all of that?
Yeah. I don't know if it was that or maybe they were like going like safe numbers into the next gen because if they went like too ambitious with it, maybe they would have left things on the table, and it also creates this sense of like, oh, I gotta have it. It's finishing up on every store and everybody's buying it, but not me. So like, I mean, I've had experiences trying to buy the new Nvidia cards, the 30 series. Um, I entered the stores at the time that they released, and I couldn't get it. So yeah, people had that experience with the PlayStation 5, with the X, and I think it's some of everything, all the things that have been going on this year, and also a slower transition to next gen. I feel like, because I think that there is not a lot of need for you to go into the new consoles, into the new graphics cards. You're still good with last year's graphics cards, last gen consoles still. I feel like maybe even well half into the next gen.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you just said regarding especially with the aspect of we had two like sort of middle step or middle child consoles, which
Right.
is something that was not really precedented. I mean, we've seen
Yeah.
redesigns, but these spec bumps that we saw are quite frankly, uh, especially the Xbox. I'd say that
Right.
in some ways the One X is more powerful than the Series S, and I
Right.
think that that's pretty telling of how kind of like the technology is newer, but maybe the results will not be there immediately,
Exactly.
and and also on the Nvidia side, we saw a lot of uh, benchmarks that were like, okay, maybe Nvidia overpromised a little bit the performance of the
Mhm.
3000s because they were like, oh, it's a massive upgrade, and
Right.
if fair enough that they are an upgrade and they are cheaper than the
Yeah.
previous generation, but the reality is that that generational leap is not really there.
Right.
I'd say that even a 1000, if you are or a
Yeah.
1080, I should say, will be
Hmm.
very safe for a long time still, as long as you maybe avoid things like maybe 4K or
Right.
the ray tracing and things like that maybe they are too much. But yeah,
True.
I do think that the generation, I feel like this was something that some people talked about with the last generation, with the
Hmm.
PS4 and the Xbox.
Right.
But I feel like that's more true here, that the hardware doesn't seem to justify all that much, that upgrade. I don't know
Right.
if you've seen that Sony has been patching a lot of PlayStation 4 games
Yeah.
to include, like, they did something with the way that they process the memory, or they access the memory.
Hmm.
And now games like Until Dawn essentially have no loading screens. I think
Yeah.
Spider-Man had a massive one where it has a considerably smaller loading time. So, and this is the same hardware; it's just been optimized. So, like, yeah, the SSDs will be probably one of the more notorious ones, but like we're still like getting new things with this existing hardware. It's the same console; it's just being updated. So
Yeah, and I mean, even the newer games are coming to the old consoles. Uh, the new Horizon, the new God of War, the new Spider-Man. They're all coming to the older systems. So I feel like there's not that much of a rush. I mean, you probably will notice a difference between playing it on the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, but I think that it doesn't really take away from your experience if you play it on PlayStation 4. And I think that's only talking about like the AAA games, the games that like squeezed to the max the hardware. But if you look at the most popular games right now, they're really not that graphically heavy or whatnot. Like Among Us or Phasmophobia, Fortnite, League of Legends, Minecraft. They're all games that they don't really need much. I mean, most of them you can play it on your phone, and that's not even talking about like streaming or anything. Like just natively.
yeah, that's a great point. Like, you see the most popular games. I guess that you could make the argument for games like League that are really old at this point, but
Right.
still, like it stands to things like Among Us or even Fall Guys. Like
Fall Guys,
you
yeah, I
you
forgot
can
that one.
play on very very modest hardware, I guess you could say, and they run fine, and you have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I mean, at some point, you do have to kind of step back and go, what is this next? Who is this next gen for?
Right.
Who is this next gen for? Because I don't know. I feel like I do feel that there is something to be said about all these next gen titles still being available for existing hardware.
Yeah.
I do know that there are some exceptions there, like Demon Souls, but Demon Souls is a
Yeah. Demon's
remake,
Souls.
so it's kind of different, I guess.
Sure.
But Spider-Man is it's coming. Halo on the Xbox
Halo, yeah.
side, so
Assassin's Creed, I think. I
Watch
don't know if
Dogs Legion,
Watch Dogs. Yeah, Watch Dogs.
Cyberpunk 2077. In fact,
Right.
I don't know if this is a rumor or if it's something confirmed by CD Projekt
Hmm.
Red, but Cyberpunk was delayed to be able to launch alongside current gen and next gen and PC. So
Right.
they're still kind of like, it's really like you said, it's a slower transition. Probably
Hmm.
3 years down the line is when truly your PS4 or Xbox One will be truly uh, phased out. But until then,
Right.
I do think that this generation, there's no real reason to jump in right away. I mean, that being said, I am getting a PS5,
Hmm.
but uh, I'm more of an enthusiast. I think that there is something to
Sure.
be said about me being fully aware that I don't need it, because the
Yeah.
one game that I want the most is Miles Morales, and two things. I know that it's a small game; it's not really Spider-Man 2,
Yeah.
and it's available on the PS4. So
Right.
it does stick out a little bit more than other times, and and I do wonder if people will notice that, because they won't notice that until it's here, because I think
Right.
that people are very easily sold into the hype,
Yeah.
you know,
Totally.
and it's very easy to kind of tell someone, look at the speed differences, and
Yeah.
uh, even though it's a little bit tricky because the PS4 Pro was supposedly already 4K, but it rarely hit 4K. It was more so like checkerboard rendering,
Right.
1440p, things like that. But this will be more natively more often than not. So
Yeah.
it's tricky. I even think that there's some discussion to be had, but I do think that there is something here of people will notice that a little bit more as we go along, I think.
Right. I think that at launch the next gen consoles will have no problems. You know, they'll be bought by people like you said, enthusiasts or people that got caught up in the hype and all the buzzwords and these new things that they don't really use that much. The consoles like 8K or whatnot, like you're not even gonna use that really. But it's the long run that we're gonna see who is really like moving on to the next generation. Look who's selling the most consoles still. It's Nintendo, and the Switch is like what would you call it, like even a generation behind it, and they're not doing anything. Like, I mean behind PlayStation 4 and whatnot, and it still plays a lot of those games. But they're not worrying about that. Their games are selling perfectly fine, and the consoles, as I said, are the most sold for the last I don't know how many months. So yeah, I mean they don't seem worried at all to be moving into next gen, and as you said, I think that we're gonna see that people are not rushing into it several months after the console's release rather than the launch.
Yeah, I think I have a thought along those lines of
Mm-hmm.
we will have a very big like quick adoption, and then
Yeah,
it'll slow down, kind of like very high end PCs or very high end phones, where the
sure.
launch month is the one that has a lot of acquisitions, and then maybe we will be seeing a rise in the sales of maybe the digital PS5 or the Series S, where maybe people that go, okay, maybe I'll jump in, but not at full price. I
Right.
do think that something like that will happen. On PC, it's a little bit harder to address because there is a very infamous situation going on with GPUs where the prices have kind of stagnated. They've remained very very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, where we live here in Mexico, they've gotten very very expensive if you
Right.
buy them locally. I
Yeah.
bought a GPU earlier in the year, and that has skyrocketed to about twice the price.
Well.
Uh, yeah, close to twice. Oh no, maybe twice. Yeah. So it's very difficult to kind of address PC here because it's a very different market. I do
Yeah.
think some other places will have a better time with that, but like even still with the pre-order issues and Nvidia not selling anymore their own hardware, which is kind of nuts when you think about it.
Right.
So yeah, it's this whole thing, and like you said, the Switch is doing gangbusters.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna bet, and this is something. Well, I'm gonna bet in the sense of I'm sure I'm not putting any money into this,
Right.
but I think that we will have another PS2 situation where the PS2 outsold the Xbox 360 when it came out, like that Christmas. The
Oh,
PS2
right. Right. Right.
outsold the X360, and the same happened with the PS3, where the PS2 sold more that Christmas than the PS3.
Oh,
I,
well.
I do think that the Switch will outsell those two, simply because of the massive library that thing has amassed through
Right.
the years. And the other day I was looking at some of the sales numbers of games like Mario Kart 8, Animal Crossing,
Right.
like
Smash,
no other
Pokemon.
system. Yeah, the Pokemon games. No other system right now has those insane numbers going on for single games. Like some of the
Right.
biggest games on PS4, like no disrespect to games like Final Fantasy VII or The Last of Us Part Two, which were very successful on their own right.
Right.
They sold nowhere near the numbers that Nintendo games are selling right now.
Right.
I do think that speaks a lot to what you were saying earlier, alongside with the popularity of Fall Guys and Among Us, where people are
Mm-hmm.
kind of okay with how things run today. So uh, it will be interesting to see the long-term reception of next gen hardware.
Yeah, that's right. And I think we really haven't touched this yet, but there's also cloud gaming. People aren't gonna need to have the best of hardwares to run current gen games. With if xCloud becomes extremely popular and people get good enough internet access to play that, I think that will slow down people from getting into the newest and fastest hardware they can get their hands into.
Yeah, I absolutely think cloud gaming will call a lot of the people that have they play a lot on their phones, or I know people, not personally, but I've heard of people that the main way they play is through streaming device, like an Android device, like a
Sure.
Chromecast or an Apple TV or something.
Right.
And Microsoft is looking into precisely putting their app of game streaming on those devices. So
Yeah.
that is another. Although I think it's a somewhat different market. I'm not sure how much overlap is there. But of course it'll be interesting to see the adoption of that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's very interesting to see, to kind of wonder where cloud gaming is going. I have seen, probably out of the three consoles, the one that has it more weirdly integrated is the Switch,
Right.
simply because it's not really an app like a PlayStation Now or Xbox Game Pass streaming or whatever they ended up calling it.
Sure.
It's more like a pair app basis, and I do think that's kind of clunky. Like the one with Control, for example, that just came out.
Yeah.
I do think that's like kind of clunky. I'm not sure if that business model will work on the long run.
Yeah, they're gonna have to work their quirks with that, but we even see Nintendo experimenting with this, which seems kind of crazy to me. That I think that has not been here for long. Nintendo is already getting into or looking into getting into, so I think that's very telling also.
Yeah. When Nintendo is like on the cutting edge tech, it means that it's probably more viable than we think, because Nintendo is very conservative when it comes to that kind of thing.
Right.
When it comes to the internet in general.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X are like a couple of weeks from releasing, so we're gonna see how the internet reacts to all of this and what games are people playing still, or if people are still playing those other games we're talking about, the Among Us and Fall Guys of the gaming world.
Yeah, I mean, some people might say that they are fads, that we've had games like that before, but the point still stands. Whatever the trend is, it's usually not this super demanding game.
Right.
I guess that one of the more demanding games right now that are popular is Call of Duty.
Warzone, yeah.
Yeah, Warzone, I'd say, is one of the more demanding ones, and it's a very demanding one. But it's the outlier, not the rule. So
yeah, definitely.
So it's one of those things where I don't think that you could really use that to like point out on the opposite direction, given that there are so many examples of the opposite. And even Call of Duty, they have the battle royale mode in Call of Duty Mobile. It's not the same thing, but
right.
I'm sure that a lot of people get their fix there. So
yeah, the Call of Duty Mobile is also very popular.
Yeah, so and it's phone games, it's like laptop games.
Right.
A lot of kids today, I shouldn't say kids, like teenagers and whatnot. I don't want to feel too old. Are playing on their Chromebooks from school. So
sure.
I'm sure that a lot of developers are looking into, okay, we kind of have this profile now, where maybe they are playing on a tablet, on a Chromecast, on a Chromebook, on fairly modest hardware. We can't rule them out quite like that. Like maybe they would before, where they would be more willing to kind of write off a certain demographic in the name of having a more impressive looking game.
Definitely, yeah.
And another interesting subject, I would guess, at least interesting to me. I'd like to
Hmm.
talk about the controllers a little bit
Sure.
because uh, there is something kind of funny about the way that people talk about, especially the DualSense controller, where
Right.
they would go, "Oh, it's so next gen because it has a microphone, it
Hmm.
has haptic feedback on the triggers,
Yeah.
and it has like HT rumble essentially." And
Hmm.
like, sure,
Version of
they're
that.
together on a controller maybe for the first time,
Yeah. Hmm.
but the reality is that none of those things are really new. You know,
Right.
we have the haptic feedback triggers on the Xbox One, the HD Rumble on the Switch, the microphone on the Wii U, and it was actually dropped because
Right.
very few people cared about it on the long run.
It's sort of the
And
Apple effect, where like they introduced things that Android already had, and people take it as new and revolutionary.
yeah, it's the Back to the Future meme. What
Right.
do you mean you've seen it? It's brand new. Like
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
it's that meme. And it's funny when like tech reviewers that are more like computer oriented or
Yeah.
mobile oriented, given that we're more maybe more video game oriented,
Yeah.
like, oh, the haptic feedback triggers are revolutionary, and nobody cared when the Xbox did it, you know.
Yeah. Right.
Nobody cared.
Right.
The HD Rumble on the Switch has been a ongoing discussion. I remember a lot the Peter petting on the Mario Odyssey and things like that. Like it has stuck around a little bit more than other things, but I mean, I think that these things are like being discussed today because it's still not out. I think that once it's out, like people will just forget about these things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, especially PlayStation usually drops those sort of gimmicks after like a year of using them or whatnot. I think that, I mean, I don't think that Xbox had like these sort of gimmicks before. I mean, you were talking about the triggers, and I actually didn't know they had them until you told me. And you also told me that they use it only for a couple of games. So also for them, I think Nintendo is the one that usually sticks to their guns and tries to use all the different gimmicks or hardware different sort of things that controllers may have or systems to their full extent, or maybe even all the generation. But Sony and Microsoft usually drop them, so I don't know why we're like so excited for them, because yeah, we're
Exactly.
gonna talk about them like, oh, look at this different thing that it has, and then they're gonna drop it. I honestly think they are. I mean, to me, the most useful thing is a microphone, because if you don't have like a headset or one, but not, I mean, the PlayStation 4 included a headset, so I don't really think that there was a problem there. But it's nice having a microphone in the controller. I mean, you have your, maybe you want to listen to the game in your nice speakers or TV or whatever. So you have the option there. But yeah, I mean, the other things, I want to like run out to get a DualSense or the PlayStation 5 just because of this.
Yeah, I feel the same way. To be honest, I think that the biggest upgrade seems, well, to be twofold. One, it seems that it's a bit more ergonomic. I do
Yeah.
feel that the DualShock is a little bit on the kind of uh, skinny side a little bit, and the
Yeah.
DualSense seems to be kind of fixing that.
Mm-hmm.
But the other one is that it's finally USB-C, and
Oh,
that's pretty
right.
cool.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's really cool.
because micro USB is a tricky one to use when you're going to use the controller wired. It does feel
Yeah,
like it starts coming up loose a little bit
yeah,
after some use.
definitely.
If you only charge it, it's fine. But when you start using it and you're moving it around, you can start to feel how it's becoming loose and loose over time.
Yeah.
And it's a very awful feeling, especially with the Xbox controller that I use a lot wired on the computer.
Mm-hmm.
It starts to feel like you can't move quite as much.
Right.
So the fact that we're all now migrating to USB-C, I think it's the best upgrade so
Yeah, that's
far.
great.
um,
And how's the pricing? How much does the DualSense cost?
In as I've heard them called, freedom bucks. I don't know.
Hmm.
But here they're not all that different. I think that they are slightly cheaper than the Switch Pro controller,
Right.
which is a little bit interesting. But
Yeah, it's on the like expensive side, the
oh
Switch Pro
yeah,
controller. So
no, but the DualSense is $70, and I think it's exactly
okay,
the same as the Switch Pro. No.
I think the Switch Pro controller originally was 80.
Oh, that was actually dropped. Yeah, it's 70. Oh,
Oh,
but
nice.
that was like dropped,
I don't remember really. I mean, it was like 3 years ago, but
right?
I know that the Joy-Cons recently got dropped, so I'm not sure about that.
Ah, but it was like
It
a
was
very specific use case, right? Like it was just the single Joy-Cons.
right, single Joy-Cons.
Yeah, that kind of sucks because I'm sure most people are probably trying to get them in pairs.
Yeah, but I think I don't know what happened with that. It was weird.
You know
So it
the
was so I think that before, like if you bought two separate ones, it was like more expensive than getting a pair, right? But now it's like the same price if you get two ones. So like, um,
yeah,
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 yeah.
I think that's what it is, but not the greatest deal there.
Mm-mm. No, no,
Uh,
really.
I do think that they should have dropped also the pairs, like
Sure.
even if it's $5 or 10. The Switch has
Right.
been around for 3 years. I do think it warrants some kind of price cut.
Yeah, definitely.
And the Xbox controller is $10 cheaper, and I think that it's
Oh,
exactly
that's
the
nice.
same. Like it was the last generation. It was also $10 difference,
Hmm.
but I think it's fair because the Xbox has no integrated battery.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
horrible. I mean,
I don't know,
that's
man. It's weird. Like I agree with you. I don't like it, but I've heard people be like, no, I actually prefer it, and I'm like,
but like
what?
how? Like,
Like
there's no real reason.
so the logic, I think it's twofold. One, that since you can just open the battery case on the back, you
Hmm.
can just replace them with whatever if the battery goes bad. Personally, I've never had a battery go bad on me. It's
No,
usually
no,
other
never.
things that start failing.
Right.
Um, and the other thing was, oh, that it reflects on the price. And I'm like, I mean, sure, but how much is
Oh,
10
yeah.
bucks? Like,
Yeah, I'd rather pay the difference in price than having to buy batteries or like rechargeable batteries or whatever.
yeah, because the Xbox, like the official battery, is very expensive because it has
Right.
like to be fair, it has some ridiculous amount of battery, so it
Yeah,
like justifies it. But it's
sure.
your only official option,
Right.
Otherwise, you are with some third party batteries that you don't know if they are quite as good or whatever. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
it's
weird.
it's it's a bit of a mess. I
Yeah.
think that even bigger than not having the battery itself is the issue that you create with uh, the options. Like, where do you go from there? I guess
Sure.
that's the real issue there.
Yeah.
Um, but it's interesting because Microsoft has stuck with their guns, even with their higher end controllers. I think that the Elite 2 is the very first one that did have an integrated battery,
Oh my God.
but it's the only one
Yeah,
as
but
far
that's
as
very
I know.
expensive, right? Like
Oh yeah,
compared
that's
to.
ridiculously expensive. It's really like competing with the SCUF controllers and Razer and things
Oh,
like that.
okay,
It's
okay.
it's not on this space. But what I'm saying is that like even the first Elite didn't have integrated battery,
Right.
and that that kind of bothers me. Like, oh my
Yeah,
god,
that's
it's like
crazy. Like, how is that gonna be elite?
yeah, exactly.
Oh,
Oh
look,
man.
they're releasing a Mandalorian Xbox controller, and it comes with rechargeable batteries and a charging stand, and that's $160.
Oh my.
So yeah, I mean, uh, I don't know.
I mean, well, you know what I dislike about that? The fact that they are charging you for essentially a promotional material
Right,
kind of bothers me that they are overcharging you for something like that. Like,
right, because there's not even a Star Wars game, or rather a Mandalorian Star Wars game or whatever. So it's weird.
Yeah, it's very weird.
That's strange. Although
The
I
only
would buy that if it was not that expensive.
Yeah, probably a lot of people are with you on that one. Oh, I'm seeing it right now. It's oh no, wait, it's no, it's not. That's not what I'm looking at.
It's like a gray one, and it has the Mandalorian symbol on one side and the Mandalorian crest on the other, and
Oh,
something.
but you know what? This is I think that this is the elite, right?
I don't know if it's in. I mean, I'm guessing for the price, right? It has to be.
But
I,
I think
I really
wait, it
wouldn't know
is.
how to like spot them. Like,
No, you know what? This is a regular Xbox One controller, I
oh
think.
my god!
Yeah, it's not even a Series X controller.
Wow.
I mean, it'll
I
be
mean,
compatible with
sure,
the,
because
but it's
Microsoft are not assholes, right?
yeah, that's actually a pretty cool move of them. To be completely honest with you.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of crazy to me that PlayStation is not doing that. I mean, I guess because they can justify it, although I don't buy it that the DualShock doesn't have all the things that the DualSense has. But like, I'm sure you can even disable them on the DualSense 5. So
Yeah, like I mean, they do
DualSense,
this all the time where they sell you USB controllers that are cheaper,
right?
but they don't have a battery, they don't have maybe rumble, but you can
Yeah.
still play them, and they're fantastic for your little brother, for your
Hmm.
friend that's coming to play, whatever.
Right.
Like it happens all the time. You
Yeah.
can't tell me that a microphone is like the end of the world, right?
Right. Right. Right.
Uh, yeah, it's a really a ridiculous reason. I do think that that's one of the worst practices that Sony has kept
Sure.
along with this new console,
Yeah.
because the console is perfectly compatible with the DualShock
Right.
4.
You can
Uh,
even use them in PlayStation 4 games, so that's like the most
yes,
dumb thing.
yeah, exactly. And these things, I know that most people will like just eat it up, but
Yeah.
come on, like we do have to kind of like do something about this.
Yeah.
I mean, for sure, I'm not buying another controller or anything like that, because I would
Yeah.
be more inclined. For example, right now, I'm very inclined to upgrade my old. Like I have like 2+ years with my current Xbox controller, so I do
Right.
want to upgrade to the new one.
Yeah.
And they even said that the batteries of the like the if you bought the battery, the
The
Xbox
pack.
battery, yeah, the
Yeah.
pack, it will be compatible with the next
Oh,
gen.
nice.
So I'm kind of like it's so convenient for me to have
Right.
a new controller that I'm actually inclined to get one, even though I'm probably gonna wait a couple of years before I get a Series X, because it works with my Xbox, it works with
Right.
my PC. It's just like so seamlessly
It's very
integrated.
inviting.
Yeah, it's very inviting, and the dual sense, it's like it doesn't work on the PS4.
Right.
It just works on the PS5. It's very expensive.
Right.
Uh, like to use it with your computer, I guess that you can use whatever controller with your computer, but
Yeah.
so far it seems like you still need a special adapter to use it wirelessly with the Remote Play app or the PlayStation Now app,
Right.
which is the case with the DualShock 4. And like those kind of almost contrarian, stuck to their guns kind of things are, in my
Yeah.
opinion, kind of like dated,
Yeah.
and
Definitely.
because before, I'd say that before it was more acceptable because the technology was very different.
Hmm.
Like you look at the way the DualShock 3 was on the internals, and you see that they had a very different connection. It doesn't really work quite like
Hmm.
modern Bluetooth.
Yeah.
Like on PC, you have to download certain software,
Hmm.
and and you have to mod the controller on the inside through a firmware update. And I think that some forms of Bluetooth don't work with it. And so
Yeah.
I kind of understand how the DualShock 3 was different, and
Hmm.
also the Xbox 360 controller and the Wii U controller. Like they have this
Yeah.
thing where they kind of work differently. But right now that you have actual retro compatibility with it for certain things, like there's no excuse. Like, what are you doing?
Right.
And I don't know. I do think that it's very interesting how they both have their own issues. We were complaining about the battery earlier, but then
Mm-hmm.
it's the more convenient one for some things, and so it's like pick your poison, I guess.
Yeah.
Uh, and meanwhile, the Switch Pro may be a very expensive controller, but it
Mm-hmm.
does have a very generous battery
Right.
with like 40 hours or something like that. Like
Yeah.
it has never died on me. That's for sure. Like
Yeah, me
it
neither.
tells you with like 5 hours of anticipation that it's running
Yeah,
out of
near
battery.
time. Right.
So and it works with Steam. It even worked with Steam OS at this point. So
Right.
it does have a very good integration with PC, which I guess it's
Mm-hmm.
the only integration that you can really hope for. I'm not
Yeah.
seeing like Sony or Microsoft coming out of the way to give you some compatibility with the Nintendo's controller.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, again, like I don't want to like give props to Nintendo too much, but that's also a good approach to the controller so far, you know.
Yeah, and I wouldn't doubt that they take the Switch Pro controller into next generation or whatnot. I think that it's a very solid one. As you were saying, probably the Wii U Pro controller worked like really differently. It didn't have USB-C and whatnot, so maybe they couldn't take that into the Switch. But I think that this one they will. And we're hearing rumors about Nintendo releasing like a Switch Pro or whatever, but I don't think that they're gonna leave their controllers behind or nothing like that.
No, I don't think so either. And in fact, the Switch Pro, I couldn't even tell you what they could upgrade it with. I mean, they could maybe like add a microphone or like bells and whistles, really.
Sure.
But it has a very nice build. It has the HD Rumble, the very good battery. It's USB-C, which is
A
something
headphone
that
jack. I think that it's
the headphone jack would be
really
one.
like the biggest thing that
Uh,
it's missing, I think.
yeah, that's probably the one, right?
Yeah.
But it's to a certain degree, it's like a like an addition. It's not really a design change. It's not
Sure.
like the Joy-Cons, where probably the Joy-Cons would have very different sticks, for example.
Yeah.
That's probably the one thing. Uh, Although it is interesting that Nintendo has kind of dropped entirely the analog triggers ever since the Wii. That was the last time that we saw something like that from them. But
Mm-hmm.
I haven't really missed them all that much.
Yeah, I mean, even.
So why don't we talk about some of the games that are coming to next gen? We mentioned them by name, talking about the release dates and the cross gen versions and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But let's talk a little bit about some of those standouts. I think that you could argue that on the Xbox side, we kind of lost the biggest one. It's apparently even a 2022 game right now, Halo Infinite.
Yeah, it's losing a lot of its like directors and creative people. And
yeah, that's very concerning. Honestly, I can't really remember a game that has lost so many of its staff and changes and whatnot, and come out and be like a modern masterpiece.
Mm-hmm.
I can't really think of one like that right now.
Yeah.
And it's kind of weird because outside of maybe the storyline and some changes that you want to do, how different can a new Halo really be? You can do like a new one, whatnot, but how much trouble can a fairly safe FPS can be, right?
Right. Like how can you F up Halo? Like people like what they like. People like the classic ones more than the new ones. So just hold on to that and try new and different ideas. Probably a battle royale. Everyone is doing that with their FPSs, but make it have a Halo touch, or continue with the story. Make Master Chief the protagonist and have like a big role in it. I think that it's not really too complicated. I mean, making the game, of course, is, and all the programming and artists and whatnot. But I think that the structure and the decisions of how the game is going to be, I think that it's not too hard of a thing to do. I mean, you compare it with maybe Cyberpunk, and I think that maybe that's a much more ambitious game, and with all the things that they want to do and their ideas and whatnot. And that's also a game that's been having lots of development trouble and pushback and whatnot. And that seems to be a common thing with the new generation games. I don't know if, as we were saying in the beginning, maybe they rushed this new generation, and that's why we've been seeing lots of delays and lots of games that are coming to the current gen consoles and whatnot.
Yeah, I think that the current gen consoles thing is confidence. Like I think that they have some fears of how many people are gonna really buy like the new consoles at launch, and so they don't want to lose that market of all the people that already have the existing hardware. So
Yeah,
I think that there's a lot of that there, where they want to make their money back.
sure.
Especially with this like 5-10 year development cycles. I mean, I was like there is this guy that said like Cyberpunk. In the time that Cyberpunk was announced and it's coming out, I entered college, I graduated, I got married, I'm having
Oh
a
my God.
kid, like, and all of that was like the 6 years or so that Cyberpunk was announced, and it's still not out.
Right.
It's due in a month or like month and a half, but
Yeah.
like
If it
these
comes out
things,
that day.
yeah, if it comes out, maybe let's not get there just yet,
Right.
but it's a good segue into Cyberpunk. I do think that Cyberpunk has a lot more going on in terms of like this is next gen because of the visual complexity alongside the complexity of AI and the different storylines that you can experience, and
Yeah.
like I can see that more as a true next gen thing. Uh,
Mhm.
on the PC side, it does have a somewhat high bar in terms of the hardware that can play it,
Mhm.
especially on the GPU side. I
Right.
would say is uh, like somewhat more demanding. Like
Yeah.
if you compare it to some GPUs that are more comparable to PS4 or Xbox One, those are supposedly not compatible. They can't quite play it, but
Mhm.
that one is, and it says like recommended SSD and things like that. So I do think
Mhm.
that game is one that kind of will showcase more what next gen will look and feel like, in terms
Yeah.
of the feature set. It's
Definitely.
not quite like Watch Dogs Legion, which is just another open world like a Ubisoft game, but
Mhm.
now it has ray tracing on the Series X.
Right.
Like nice, but it's the same game.
And
It's
I've seen some screenshots and whatnot, and I think that they're abusing some of the ray tracing and whatnot. They like everything is so shiny and so reflective and whatnot. So like people are noticing that.
yeah. I've noticed that where whenever a new feature comes out, they abuse it. Like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah.
Uh, they did that with motion blur. They did it with
Yeah.
film
Right.
grain. They did that with like real time shadows.
Mhm.
They've done that with everything that has kind of jumped in.
Mhm.
I do also remember like early like complicated facial animations where now they could also move the eyes and the eyebrows, and it looked
Yeah.
like the face was melting. I remember
Right.
Assassin's Creed 2 would look kind of wonky sometimes because
Mhm.
like characters, their eyebrows would go like up to here, and it didn't look natural at all. So like that's kind of normal, I'd say. Like
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
abusing that, but it's kind of normal. A game that I do think looks very impressive visually, but its remake is Demon Souls.
Demon Souls. Yeah.
there was some controversy. The poor folks over at Digital Foundry covered a somewhat old build with
Hmm.
which ran at 1440p on the
Okay.
60 FPS version, and I
Hmm.
think the 30 FPS version as well. But that was later patched, like a month later or so,
Right.
into a 4K 30 and dynamic 4K 60. And so far what we've seen from the gameplay trailers, it looks really impressive. Like
Yeah.
I do think that in some sense, since they were remaking an existing game, it was easier to implement all these visual sets, right? And I think something similar with Miles Morales, where since it's a smaller game, this is
Hmm.
like a proof of concept for Spider-Man 2, right? Like
Right.
maybe that's the Sony strat on this
Hmm.
side, like release somewhat smaller projects, so to speak,
Hmm.
at launch with very impressive graphics. You could say the same
Yeah.
thing about the Sackboy game, by the way,
Right.
where actually some people were speculating
Yeah.
that maybe this is like a demo for a 3D Little Big Planet.
Mm.
Uh, like they are using some of the tools that will later be available to players,
Right.
and I think that that's a very fair assessment. I do think that
Mhm.
that's something that may be happening.
Yeah. I mean, most of the games that are coming with a new generation launch probably gonna try like all sort of different things and see what works and what not. See what people like. See what people are talking about. What are they impressed with? To get people into the new generation. To get people to come and buy their new consoles and their new games and whatnot. I think to me, Demon Souls also seems like the most interesting game out of those bunch. Visually and gameplay wise, and that is one of the games that is not coming on older hardware. So I think that they're doing some things right with getting people excited for next generation. And but there's plenty of games that are coming out uh, launch day or launch window of next generation that you can play with older hardware.
Yeah, I mean, even on the Nintendo side, I think that they have
Right.
a very strong, like, end of year lineup, especially
Yeah.
with the new Age of Calamity. I mean,
Yeah, definitely.
I'm certainly hyped for it. But on
Right.
the like, and that's on a tablet, like, and
No,
it
but
doesn't have
definitely,
like.
and they probably got another game for uh like the end December, because Age of Calamity is coming in November, right? So they probably
Right.
got their surprises, and then they're gonna talk about beginning of next year and whatnot. So I think that they're not staying behind at all with software.
No, not at all. I mean, right now, Pikmin 3 was just
Pikmin 3
announced, well, was just released, but
released, yeah.
that's a remake. But I
Hmm.
mean, Nintendo has been a lot on the train of announcing a game 1 month before it comes out, or a month and
Yeah.
a half, or something like that. So they
Hmm.
still have plenty of time to announce whatever the end of year game is. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, the reality is that this holiday you don't really need a new console. That's something
Right.
that I guess it's like very key in terms of
Sure.
kind of warning people. If you really want
Right.
to play Demon Souls, you can play that on a PS3. So
Right.
like, and maybe you have one lying around or whatever.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, unless you like really want to like jump in because you're an enthusiast like us, like we were talking
Hmm.
about PC and PS4, I mean
Right.
PS5, or because you just want to have the new thing or whatever. But
Hmm.
don't don't go in thinking that like the old hardware is done. Like that's
Right.
that's not true. It's
No, no
just not
way.
the case. I mean, even the Call of Duty Cold War, which
Hmm.
comes like a couple weeks or a week after the next
Hmm.
gen consoles,
Yeah.
it's still not even confirmed for the next gen consoles. Uh, I have it pre-ordered
Hmm.
because I want to kind of monitor it. I don't even know if I'm gonna buy it,
Hmm.
but I have it
I think
pre-ordered.
it is confirmed, because I think that there's a pack you can buy which gets you both the old and the new console release.
So yeah, but it's only sold through the existing version. you know. So
Right.
like you can't buy the PS5 version so
Yeah.
far.
Right.
I misspoke. I see how I misspoke now. I was talking about the physical versions,
Mm-hmm.
where they are like the PS4 versions, and what a lot
Yeah.
of people think is that you're just gonna play that through some kind of backwards compatibility or something.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and like some retailers, and
Yeah.
I saw this, and they have it on pre-order, but
Yeah.
like they can just create whatever pre-order page they want, and they can just cancel everything. And so
Right.
far, like I checked it earlier, it still
Mm-hmm.
has no date. It still has no like
Right.
confirmation or anything. It's just there as a placeholder.
Yeah.
So a lot of great games will not even fully come out to next gen consoles. They will be
Yeah.
as a bonus edition of the existing one. You know,
Sure.
at least that's what seems to be happening so far.
Right.
Uh, and I do think another big issue that we're seeing with some of the new games is the price. I do think that Demon Souls
Right.
really shouldn't be $80. Like
No. No way.
I mean that's well, number one, a remake.
Yeah.
Number two, it's really like $20 upmark from one generation to the other. It does seem kind of crazy to me.
That's
Uh,
crazy. Yeah. I mean, we always give Nintendo a hard time for selling, Wii U ports or like smaller games for $60, but no game should be $80. Like, no way. And I think
yeah,
also that's
no,
the price of, the Call of Duty pack we were talking about. If you want to get it for both PS4 and 5, and other games that I'm not remembering specifically which one is and which one isn't 80, but there's quite a few of them that are.
yeah, I think that the two exceptions that come to mind are the Sackboy game. I don't remember
Mhm.
if it's 50 or 60,
Right? Yeah.
and Spider-Man Miles Morales.
Miles
That's
Morales.
50.
But if you
Uh,
want to get it with the older Spider-Man, it's 80 now, right? Or even 90. I don't know.
oh, it's 90. Oh my god.
I'm not sure. Don't quote me
I
on that.
mean, let's check that.
But it's
It's
probably
interesting.
at least 80 if you want to get it with the older Spider-Man, like the PS4 Spider-Man, I guess.
Right. It's 70
Okay.
with the
With
remaster.
okay, I mean
I
that's
mean,
not
but a
that bad, I guess.
$20 upmark for essentially a port, it does seem kind
Right?
of crazy, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, in a sense, if it was 20 standalone, like
Hmm.
that's essentially what it costs on the PS4 essentials or whatever they call them.
Yeah,
But I mean, in a bundle, that's where it feels a little bit too expensive. Like
yeah,
$20. Yeah, it's kind of yeah. I mean, and I'm still a little bit worried about the playtime of Miles Morales. Like
right.
I'm worried it's another Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes
Hmm.
where it's a very short game. I mean, I don't think it'll be
Yeah.
that bad, but I do worry
Hmm.
a little bit about it being too short because like looking at a $30 differential from Demon Souls
Hmm.
does kind of have me worried. But
Yeah, definitely.
I guess we'll see with that. So
Hmm.
another interesting development, I'd say,
Yeah.
with next gen hardware is on the PC space. I mean,
Hmm.
it might be a little bit too early to chime in on AMD, but I do think it's
Yeah.
interesting to see, like now there's some benchmarks coming out that maybe now they're the kings of the single thread performance and multi-thread performance, and the GPUs are also looking really strong. So
Hmm.
it might be a good thing to kind of like point it out and maybe address uh, like AMD's is I don't want to call them like a small company because they are still a massive corporation,
Yeah.
but I think it's interesting to see like new players coming out, and I guess
Yeah.
we can also talk about that on the cloud end. But it's interesting because I do think that AMD, given that they are doing the hardware of consoles, this would be their second time doing both the Xbox and the PlayStation.
Hmm.
I do think that some of the cards might be switching around to some games preferring Intel and AMD GPUs and things like that. I do want
Hmm.
to like throw that out there. I think that maybe this generation will be a better time for AMD, where it will be an AMD first kind of thing. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't know if that will happen. I think that they will. I mean, if everybody starts like moving on into AMD, processors and GPUs and whatnot, maybe that's the case. But I think I think it's too early to tell right now if that's going to happen. I think that they will always go first with a product that most people have. But if AMD starts being like cheaper and more available to everybody, then yeah, probably that will eventually happen.
Yeah, it will be interesting to kind of track that, to see how it develops. Uh, and you were talking a little bit more. I mean, you were talking about cloud gaming, and
Yeah,
something that I would like to ask you, maybe to close. I don't know, uh,
sure.
but what do you think about all of the new players that are jumping in? Like we have, of course, Nvidia with GeForce Now. We have
Yeah.
Game Pass. We have now Luna with Amazon.
Amazon, yeah.
Do you think that it's maybe getting a little bit crowded, or do you think that it's kind of like
I
there is
mean,
that big of a market?
no, I don't think that there's that big of a market, but I also don't think it's getting too crowded because I don't think people are even using those services like Stadia or I think that Luna is going to be the exact same thing as Stadia. Like, I just think that they're showing us how not to do things and how people do not want those kinds of services. So I think like as a consumer, like I'm not buying those things and I'm just looking how they crumble and how the companies that are probably gonna stay in that market, like Microsoft or Nvidia, are looking at that like as an example of what not to do and what people actually want. So I think it's better for us, honestly, if those competitors start emerging and start showing us different sides that maybe we weren't even thinking about, like decisions so like strange and dumb that we were not even really considering. So we know another thing that we do not want in our services.
Yeah, Luna is particularly weird given that Stadia already happened. You
Yeah.
know, like that was such a wild and different thing, and now we have like the GeForce way seems to be
Yeah.
working pretty well for them. Although they are having compatibility issues, like they drop titles very often.
Yeah.
Uh, I've actually had to kind of drop some games because I was playing them through there and they drop. And then I think that the most clean so far is Microsoft with the Xbox Game Pass streaming, given
Hmm.
that it's a seamless one subscription kind of deal, which I think that's the way streaming will end up working, and it seems to
Yeah.
be the case so far. Uh, but Luna was particularly weird because they had like tiers and subscriptions where you had like the Luna one, and then they were talking about channels, like you subscribe to the Ubisoft channel, and the
Yeah.
like that's too much, man. Like cut it out. Like
Yeah. I don't know what they're doing.
yeah, I think that it's another uh, like they did with their phone, that they had everything to win, but they failed in very key aspects,
Right.
and like they jumped in just with a bunch of money,
Right.
and,
Right.
and, and like just burned it, and that's what happens sometimes.
Right.
But, well, I guess that's I mean, I don't know, we've covered so many things so far. I don't know, what else would you like to address in terms of this next gen discussion?
Yeah, I mean, I just think that next gen is going to be like really interesting with all the different ways to play the games that we have available for us. And it will be interesting to see who stays here and who dies out and what things like stay with us for generations to come and what things were only just gimmicks for this generation.
Right. You know something that you mentioned, it's very interesting. how are they going to handle having to make, like, for example, Watch Dogs Legion? It's coming
Yeah.
out for the Xbox One, Xbox One X, PS4, PS4 Pro. Let's say PS5 has two, like, the same specs, but it's two versions of it. And then you have the Series
Yeah.
S and the Series X. It's 7 consoles essentially, maybe
Right.
8, depending on how you look at it. But it's an insane amount of different specs, right?
Yeah,
For
yeah.
consoles.
It's really crazy. I mean, I don't know how different some of those are gonna be, or like how they're gonna handle that. But yeah, it's like you need to be like absolutely triple A or for A, like to be able to do that, because you need a lot of personnel and money and whatnot.
Yeah, now that I contextualize that, it makes sense why Cyberpunk kind of had to pull it back a little bit
Yeah.
further. Uh, but yeah, I mean, it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be a wild ride, I think, as well. I think that some crazy pulls will happen along the way.
Hmm.
Uh, but yeah, uh, probably one of the most interesting topics. And guys, if you've made it this far, absolutely do let us know what you think about next gen.
Right.
It's gonna be a crazy thing. It's great to speculate. I really like this conversation. So do let us know what you think in the comments below. This is Paco Trevino, and today, as always, I'm always joined by Laura Chapa.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Thanks for watching. Bye, guys.